In this Circuits of the Past video, Herman shows you the 1955 to 1983 layout of the TT Circuit Assen in the Netherlands. During this period, it was only used for motorcycle races. We start at the start-finish straight, which has been here since 1926. Shortly after the start was the famous S-corner, a fast right-left combination. It was easy full throttle with a spectacular vantage point to see the motorcycles move from right to left at high speed. Unfortunately, this spectacular corner was demolished in 2006 for the modernisation of the track. Here you see the new circuit turns right, but Herman's going to follow the old circuit as far as possible with the current runoff area. To see what's behind the fence, we have to make the switch to the drone. First, a look at the current start-finish straight and the new northern loop. And here you see where the old track used to be. The part directly behind the fence is now a parking lot. Further on, it becomes a public road, which will now follow onward. The Circuit of Assen was originally a street circuit. The first ever Dutch TT was held here in 1925 on the street circuit with the start-finish straight in the village of Rold, not too far from Assen. A year later it was moved to the new street circuit near the city of Assen. In 1955 a semi-permanent circuit opened, which used parts of the old street circuit, like the start-finish part. The layout you see now is the first layout of this new semi-street circuit, which was specifically designed for motorcycles. Until the 1990s, racing cars around Assen was practically taboo. Here we are at the original S-Bocht corner, the first corner of the original Northern Loop. When the Northern Loop was shortened in 1984 and again in 2006, new S-Bocht corners were built, but this one's the real one. The footage here was taken in 2013. When you see the new footage of this section, you'll discover why Herman used this old footage. The name of this corner is Stroomdrift, but after this turn, a fence blocked the entry to the rest of the remaining Northern Loop. Here now instead is an army training ground, so it would not be easy for Herman to get access to this section. Unless he volunteered himself, of course. Attention! However, today the situation is very different. Now we jump a few hundred metres back in distance, but forward 7 years in time. Today the Stroomdrift corner is no longer accessible by car, but the military training ground is gone. This section is now open for cyclists and pedestrians. Sadly, they've narrowed down the old track here. While you enjoy Herman's track walk, I'll tell you a little bit more about the history of this version of the TT Circuit Assen. But before I do that, I want to introduce the guy named Herman. That's Herman Lischmeyer, founder of the Circuits of the Past website and YouTube channel. I'm Simon Smith and I do the voiceovers for the Circuit of the Past videos. I have a YouTube channel too called Higher Plane Games if you're interested. As I said earlier in this video, this version of the track opened in 1955 and was based on the 1926 to 1954 street circuit. The old TT circuit ran on the grounds of both the municipality of Assen and the municipality of Veenslang. When the organisers wanted a reconstruction of the circuit, the mayor of Veenslang didn't want to cooperate, so the new track was built on the territory of Assen instead, and Assen alone. Well, at least that's the story that Assen tells anyway. However, Herman's father lived in Veenslang those days and has a very different story of events. In Veenslang, people say that the municipal of Assen wanted all of the profits of the Dutch TT for themselves, so they abandoned the section through Veenslang to pocket the money. By the way, here was the fence where the onboard footage stopped. Angry residents of Veenslang predicted that it would soon all be over for the Dutch TT because of that, and I quote, Mickey Mouse Circuit. History wouldn't be too kind to that thought, would it? So, The new semi-permanent track was only built in 4 months. For that reason, they called it the Miracle of Assen. Probably they named it something different in Bayline. My vote would be the Groot Arse. When the 7.7 kilometres, or 4.78 miles for us oldies, Mickey Mouse circuit was used for the first time in 1955 for the Dutch TT, drivers in the 500cc class drove only one slow lap on the track just to gauge how much of an audience had actually come to the event. When they saw the turnout, they wanted more money from the organisation. If not, there'd be no 500cc race at all. So the organisers had to pay. One of the spectators that came to the very first Dutch TT on the new circuit was Herman's father. He also visited the last Dutch TT on the Old Street Circuit in 1954 too. The 1955 TT Circuit of Assen made use of a public road, which formed the central axis of the track. On both sides was a permanent loop, the northern loop and the southern loop. When there were no races, the full circuit was open for public use. However, both permanent loops led nowhere except to farmers' lands on the insides of the track. They were also open for traffic until 1992. In 1989, a certain Herman Lischmeyer came for the first time to the TT Circuit Assen because he'd heard that the track was open for the public. With his Opel Kadett, he drove several laps on the circuit. So here was where his passion for motorsport was born. It wasn't his only visit. Herman would be a frequent visitor of the TT Circuit Assen for some illegal racing, and when he did his first racing course at Zandvoort in the winter from 1991 to 1992, he did some extra practice at Assen too. That would be where his passion for getting involved in crazy antics would be born too. Herman also faced the risks of illegal motorsport there. He had a very scary moment at the Ramshoek corner, which we'll see later on in the video. If you want to read more about Herman's adventures during illegal racing at Assen, I recommend you to pick up his ebook, The Magic of Weathered Asphalt. There you can not only read about illegal racing at Assen, but also about other abandoned Formula One tracks, such as Nivelles in Belgium. There's a lot more other memories of Circuits of the Past in Herman's ebook, and you can buy that on the website www.circuitsofthepast.com. Okay, enough promotion for Herman's ebook. Let's get back to the early 90s of TT Circuit Assen. Herman wasn't the only naughty boy who used to use the permanent loops for illegal racing. After some grave accidents took place, the City Council of Assen decided to close the circuit to the public in 1992. Since then, TT Circuit Assen has been a full permanent racetrack. That's actually something quite similar to the Spa-Francorchamps circuit that also started out as a street circuit, then became semi-permanent, and finally a fully permanent circuit. Also, just like Spa, you can still drive some of the old parts of the circuit there too. Through the years, the layout of the 1955 track changed, but it's still the basis of the current TT Circuit of Assen's layout. For safety reasons, they shortened the northern loop in 1984. The section we're at now was cut off by a new section with a new S-Bocht corner. Remember what we said about the Mickey Mouse comments earlier? Well, to bring the length back to what the people of Bayline called a Mickey Mouse track to a more common length, they abandoned the full northern loop in 2006 and replaced it by the stadium section, which we saw at the beginning of the video. We're now at the end of Herman's track walk on the abandoned northern loop. We'll do the next bit by car. This section is now a road on the parking of Expo Assen. This part was also used after 1984, so this was also where Herman drove illegally in the late 80s and early 90s. But thankfully, he found this drive with strict permission. Here is where the surviving part of the old northern loop ends. Here was a very fast right-hand corner, one of Herman's favourites, before you had to brake hard for the Struben hairpin. We rejoin the current circuit with the new Struben hairpin, which is almost, but not exactly, on the same site as the old one. The original hairpin was actually where the gravel trap from the new one is now. After the Struben hairpin came the fast Veenslang section. In 2002 they moved this section to the left to create more space on the infield. So the Veenslang actually used to be where the paddock is now. A little bit further on are still remains of the original circuit. We're now in the remaining part of the old Veenslang. During the old days, Herman drove here much faster. Today it's an asphalt road in the paddock. With a nod to the past though, it's officially named the Old Veenslang. Don't drive too crazy through there. The annoying sound that you hear here is Herman's rear brakes. When he got home, he immediately called the garage for some new repairs, because that's an accident you do not want to have. The old Veenslang connected to the fast Ruskenhoek corner. Here you see the drone footage of the Ramshoek and the Ruskenhoek corners. In old layouts they used to be closer together, but in 1981 they moved the Ruskenhoek to the inside to create more space between them. However, because it was still a public road, there's still a connection between them. After Assen became a permanent circuit, they removed this connection, but if you look closely you can still see that both straights are in one line, and that's because originally it was all one straight. We're now back on board at the current Ruskenhoek corner. The next corner is the Steckenwall, a very hard braking point on the old circuit. Originally this was a slow rectangular corner, but after 1990 renovations they made this corner much faster. If you think about it, this version of the Steckenwall corner is a copy of the 1984 to 2005 version of the S-Bocht corner. When this was public road, the road went straight on here and the Steckenwall was the corner that led to the permanent southern loop. Here they also changed the track. There used to be a fast kink here leading to the banked bolt corner. In 2005 they demolished the original bolt corner and straightened the track. The new corner adopted the old name. If you watch this from above, you can still recognise the imprint of where the old track used to be. Now Herman explores this lost section by foot. Here is a fast kink where you need to lift the throttle for a short moment without braking. Here you can recognise where the asphalt used to be, just like what we saw in the drone footage. The bolt corner itself was a slow left-hander with a huge piece of banking. No, not quite like the old Monza banking, but for a road circuit it was really quite steep. In the grass you can still recognise the embankment of the old built corner, and the gravel path marks the outside of the old corner too. Here was where the old bolt corner reconnected to the current circuit, which will continue on by car. We're now at the double right-hand corners of Manderveen and Duikersloot. The original corners used to be where the gravel trap is now. In 1976, and again in 2002, they moved both corners to the inside to create a bigger runoff on the outside. This double right-hander leads to the most demanding part of the TT Circuit Assen, which has been untouched by modernisation, at least with regards to the track layout anyway. The grass strips have since been replaced by modern asphalt strips, but that's about it. This fast section contains short straights and fast kinks and ends with the most feared corner of the TT Circuit Assen, the Ramshoek, that separates the men from the boys. It was here where Herman once had a very scary moment, and you can read about that story in his ebook, The Magic of Weathered Asphalt, which you can buy on the website. We're now approaching the last corner of the TT Circuit Assen, the Gert Timmer chicane. This used to be a fast kink, named S-Bocht corner, but for safety reasons they modified it into a chicane in 1976. So that was our lap of the 1955 to 1983 layout of the TT Circuit Assen. Also check other videos for the past layouts of the circuits. More information about the rich history of the TT Circuit Assen can be found on the website circuitsofthepast.com, and there you can also download a free ebook about 7 abandoned racetracks that you can visit legally. For now though, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you don't miss out on our next video from another circuit of the past.